Hey Yorba Linda, the fall housing market slowdown has begun. So kids are now back in school. It's cooling off at least a little bit, which means we're going to start seeing supply and demand go down as we head through fall. So if you're thinking of buying or selling a home inside Yorba Linda over the next couple months, what does that mean for you? That's exactly what we're going to talk about on today's episode. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I really do appreciate it. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Josh Alexander, your local Yorba Linda real estate agent and host of Discover Yorba Linda, your one-stop shop for all things Yorba Linda. So whether you already live in this city or you're thinking of moving here, if you want to stay up to date on what's going on, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So in today's episode, I'm going to be doing my monthly breakdown of what to expect in the housing market inside Yorba Linda as we head through September. So if you're thinking of buying or selling a home, you're not going to want to miss this. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, Yorba Linda, so let's first look at what's been happening in our local market, and then we'll talk about what you can expect interest rates to do as well as home prices to do over the next couple months before we finally get into my advice for both buyers and sellers if you're thinking of entering the Yorba Linda housing market sometime in the near future. So first, let's go ahead and go over what's been happening in our local market. So in the month of August, 79 homes sold within Yorba Linda. So just to give you some context, typically in the months prior to that, we were selling around 60 to 65 homes. So we definitely saw an uptick in the amount of homes sold, and a lot of that probably had to do with people trying to close on their home before the school year started. Now, if you look at those 79 homes that sold, 66% of them sold at or above asking, which is a slight dip compared to last month, which is 67, but really it's not going to be noticeable. More homes than not right now are still selling for above asking price. Now, in terms of how fast the market is moving, out of those 79 homes, 60% of those homes went into escrow in less than 2 weeks, which is extremely quick even in today's market, and 75% of those homes went into escrow in less than a month. So homes are coming on the market and leaving the market relatively quickly still, and that just shows that since February, we're still in this hot seller's market where there is more demand than there is supply. Most homes are still getting more than one offer on them, even as things start to slow down, because there's just too many people shopping for homes and just not enough of them right now. There's only 50 homes in Yorba Linda, which is definitely down from the last couple months where we've been seeing 60 to 70. So even though demand is going down, inventory is going down as well. So we really haven't seen much change in the housing market since February. Every single month we're seeing appreciation in the Yorba Linda housing market. And Yorba Linda specifically compared to Orange County is actually doing a little bit better, because last month in Orange County we started seeing the fall market slow down, impact Orange County a little bit more heavily, where we saw the home market slow down in August more than it did in July. However, in Yorba Linda, we really haven't seen that slow down yet. Now, as we go into these next couple weeks, I would expect to start seeing that happen. In fact, it looks like, especially in the higher price points right now, we're starting to see the slowdown happen right there. Eventually, it will start trickling down into the lower price points as well. So why has supply been so low in Yorba Linda pretty much all year? It has everything to do with the interest rates. So right now, last week, we topped out at about 7.5%, which is a 23-year high. It's come down slightly since then, but we're still above 7% right now. And because of that, not only are we seeing demand go down, but we're seeing a lot of sellers that would traditionally want to sell their home really back out and say, I don't want to lose my interest rate where I have 3 or 4%. I'm going to hold off selling my home until rates drop farther. So all of those people that might sell their home in a traditional year have been holding on to their home, stuck in it because they don't want to sell and lose that interest rate just to buy another home, even if it's the same price, and end up paying twice the amount they're paying right now for their mortgage. It financially just doesn't make sense for a lot of people unless you need to move because your family's expanding, for a job relocation, or some type of life event like that. A lot of sellers are just staying put and just waiting it out. So when will interest rates actually start coming back down? Well, that's definitely the million-dollar question this year. So at the beginning of the year, most people were predicting that by the back half of 2023, we would start seeing those interest rates go down. However, that really hasn't happened. And the reason that really hasn't happened is because the US economy is doing better than a lot of people thought it would be. Right now, a lot of people assumed that we would be in some type of recession, we'd have a bunch of job loss going on, and because of that, the Feds would start reducing their rates, and eventually that would trickle down down and see interest rates go down for mortgages as well. But instead, what's happened is the US economy has been a lot more resilient than people thought. And because of the Fed being more aggressive, we're seeing interest rates stay higher for longer. Because even though the Fed rates are not directly tied to the 30-year mortgage, when the Fed interest rates go higher, the 10-year Treasury tends to go higher, and the 10-year Treasury is what's more tied to 30-year mortgages. So really, until we start seeing the Fed start decreasing their rates, we're not really going to see any major relief in interest rates anytime soon. So the next question becomes, when will that happen? Well, the two things that need to happen is we need to see inflation come down, which since the beginning of the year, it's actually come down quite a bit, but it still has a ways to go. So as long as we continue on that trend, that's definitely going to be a positive sign that in the future, sometime in the next 6 to 12 months, we will see lower interest rates. But the second thing that needs to happen is we need the US economy to slow down. And unfortunately, that means we need to see unemployment go up, we need to see the job market contract, and we need to see a little bit more pain in the US economy before the Feds are comfortable stopping the rate increases and possibly starting to reduce them on the back end of things. So when they start reducing those rates, that's when you can expect to see interest rates drop a little bit more dramatically, which at this point is probably not going to happen until at least the first or second quarter of next year. So for the remainder of this year, unless we get some really bad news about the economy over the next couple months, you can expect rates to stay in the low 7s or high 6s, most likely for the next couple months as we finish out the year. So besides interest rates, the second major question that I get asked often is, when are we going to see a giant housing market collapse so that way I can actually afford to purchase a home again? The California Association of Realtors just came out with a study a few weeks ago saying that only 16% of Californians can actually afford to purchase a home. So right now, affordability is at one of the lowest points it's ever been in California. So logically, you would think something has to happen in order for these homes to become affordable again so people can start purchasing again. So really the only way that I could see this happening is that if we had a bunch of forced selling like we saw back in 2006, 7, and 8, where people had to sell their property because they could no longer afford the mortgage. So after that last giant housing crash, they did a giant reform on how people were able to get loans and what they'd be approved for. So there's very strict guidelines and you have to be very well qualified to be able to purchase a home ever since around 2009. So credit profiles for everybody that owns a home right now are much better than what they were back in 2006 when people were just buying it based on stated income, which basically means they never had to prove how much they made. They could just tell the lender, this is how much I make, and they would get a loan to be able to reflect that dollar amount. That is no longer the case. People in homes right now can afford to be there. So what would actually have to happen in order for home prices to crash is we'd have to have some type of mass forced selling event where people were forced to sell their home for other reasons. And in this case, the only one that I can think of is a major job loss recession, where we had a bunch of people lose their jobs all at once and they weren't able to find employment again for 3, 6, 9 months or maybe forever. In that case, if enough people lost their jobs and were forced to sell their home, you could finally start seeing supply go up much faster than demand, which would eventually start causing home prices to come back down. But again, that's not something that's immediate. That's something that would have to happen 6, 9, 12, 18 months after people lost their job because of the process and timelines involved with foreclosures. So it's not something that's going to happen anytime soon. And for those of you hoping that will happen, the chances of that happening are extremely slim right now. So why is this type of event not very likely? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but let's quickly just go over a few of them. So one of them we already talked about, the credit profiles of homeowners right now has never been better. So not only are people that purchased homes very well qualified to do so, but right now in the United States, almost 50% of all homeowners own their home free and clear, which means they have no more mortgage, they've paid it all off. And now the other 50% that still owe a mortgage, 50% of those have 50% or more paid off. So a giant amount of equity in their home, which means that if they lost their job, there's a much better chance than back in 2006, 7, and 8 that they're going to be able to talk to the bank and come up with some type of loan repayment program that's going to enable them to keep their house and then eventually start making payments again once they start getting a job. And the third reason is the chances of a major recession seem to be going down by the day. So for instance, Goldman Sachs just came out for the third time in just the last couple months, revising its prediction on how likely we are to have a recession. And right now they've dropped it all the way down to just a 15% chance. Now they're definitely lower than some of the other major institutions out there. However, we're starting to see these larger institutions become a little bit more confident that we might still have a recession, but if we do, it's going to be a minor one and nothing that's going to be deep and long enough to be able to impact the housing market in any significant way. So if you're hoping for housing prices to crash at some point, you're basically hoping that millions of people around the US start losing their job and are forced to sell a home. So I'm not in that camp that one thinks that's going to happen or even wants that to happen to anybody, but that would be the only way that I see housing prices come down anytime soon. So with all that being said, what can you expect to see in the housing market as we head through September and October? Well, we are now firmly in the fall market, which means that supply should continue to go down as we head through the next 2 months, and demand will drop as well. Now, how much each drops, a lot of it is going to depend on what interest rates are doing. If interest rates go a little bit higher, we're seeing that demand is dropping a little bit faster than supply. If interest rates remain right around the 7% mark, however, you're probably going to see supply and demand drop at about the same rate. If interest rates go below 7%, you might see demand drop faster than supply and home prices start heating up again. Either way, right now as we head through fall, home prices are still on the rise. We are still in a seller's market, but we're just not quite as hot as we were over the last few months of summer. So what does this all mean if you're thinking of buying or selling a house? So let's go ahead and start with my advice for buyers first. So buyers, here's the most common question I get from you. Is now a good time to buy a home, and what are home values going to do over the next 12 months? Now that's a completely rational question to have, and the way I respond to this is I always ask the same question back. Well, what are you planning on doing with the property? Are you planning to own that property, live in it for a long time, 5+ years with you and your family? You can see it as a long-term home. Or are you thinking you might only be there for 2 or 3 years? You might start a family, or you have kids already that are growing up and might need their own space. And so you're thinking of upgrading to a larger home, maybe a few years down the line. That is really the biggest question you need to ask yourself right now. Because if you're in the second camp, where you're only thinking of owning a home for 2 to 3 years, no matter what the market is doing, up or down, it's always going to be more risky for you to own a home for less time than more time. So if you're thinking of buying a home for the short term, you have to be very careful about what type of offers you place, making sure you get a good value for the home, because you're just more susceptible to the general ups and downs of the housing market because it's a shorter period of time. However, if you're like most home buyers who are purchasing a home to live in long term, it's going to have less and less of an effect on you what home values are doing in the short term, because you have that monthly mortgage payment locked in, you can afford it, and over 10, 15 years, it's been shown over and over again, 100% of the time, that home values have always gone up. So the longer you plan on living in your house, the less you need to worry about what home values are going to be doing and what interest rates are doing, and more about, can I afford the payment in the neighborhood I want to be in and get the amenities I want? If the answer to that question is yes, then you should always look at talking to a lender, explore your options, see what type of loans are available for you, because that's always the first step. It's free. It usually only takes a day or two once you get the information to them, and that's going to give you a much better idea of what you can afford and if it's realistic for you to look at homes right now. Now, they might tell you, no, it's not a good time to look at homes. It doesn't look like you're going to be able to afford the type of home you want to, but in that case, good lenders are going to come up with the game plan and basically walk through all of your finances with you, letting you know this is what you need to do in order to purchase that dream home 6, 12, 18 months down the line. And so you have that plan in front of you and you can take the steps you need to get to eventual home ownership. So now on the other side, sellers. The best advice I have for sellers right now is you have to understand that we are in a transitioning market. So we're going from the summer to the fall season, which means if you're trying to place your house on the market right now, thinking that we're still having the demand numbers we saw in the summer and that you're going to have 5, 6, 7 offers on your home, you're most likely going to be disappointed. And often I see sellers overprice their home around this time of year because they still think we're in that seller's market. Now that doesn't mean you can't get top dollar for your home still, and most likely likely have the highest sale in your neighborhood based on similar homes and similar conditions. However, you need to be very strategic about that price that you offer your home at right up front, because if you overprice a home in today's market, it's going to sit there for weeks and weeks until you eventually lower the price, and that's when all those investors come out that have cash offers that will offer you $100,000 below your asking price, as well as opportunistic buyers who might think they can get a deal because you've lowered your price. So it's been shown time and time again that if you don't price your home correctly out of the gate the first time, you're leaving money on the table. So when you're going through and getting your home ready to be sold, you need to make sure you're deep diving into those comparable sales for your neighborhood and making sure you price it based on current market value and what's happening in today's market, not yesterday's market. And this should also go without saying, but because we are going through this transition right now into the fall market, you need to make sure that your marketing materials are on point and look as good as possible. You want your home to stand out above everybody else's, so you get all those eyeballs on it and the most qualified buyers through your home as possible. And this means high-end photos, videos, 3D walking tours, drone footage if needed, as well as making sure that your home is everywhere that buyers are. And that includes social media. So Instagram, Facebook, yes, even TikTok. Those type of places people are browsing and finding homes they like and contacting the agent to be able to set up tours. I get people reaching out to me on social media all the time about homes that I post on there. So you need to make sure that your marketing plan is meeting buyers where they are. And right now, most buyers are starting their tours online before they even see the property or go to an open house. So you need to make sure your marketing's on point, your curb appeal's on point, have your home staged if you can. It makes a giant difference in the selling price, and just make sure that overall your home is standing out above everybody else's. Now, if you are thinking of buying or selling a home sometime in the near future and you want to know more about the market, some strategies that you can use to make sure you're successful, as well as just general information on what it takes to buy or sell a home in today's market, feel free to contact me anytime. If you want to set up a free 30-minute discovery call, depending on where you're watching this, there'll either be a link in the description or a link in my bio. Click on that, schedule a time that's easy for you. I'd love to have a conversation and answer all the questions you have. And one last favor I have, if you did find today's episode useful, can you please hit that like and subscribe button, because I put out new episodes and new content every single week, so that way you can stay up to date. And if you know any family or friends that can use this information, please consider sharing it as well. I would really appreciate it. And until next week, stay healthy, stay happy, and I'll see you on the next show. Bye, everybody.